Everyone, it's Sammy here from A Gaming Network, and today I am joined by a very special guest from Ivy Road Game Studio, Aura, the lead animator, rigger, and do you call it a rigger?
Sure. I mean, that's definitely one of many words that people use for that discipline, along with a zillion others. There's really little consistency there sometimes.
And FX artist on the soon-to-be-released cozy game Wanderstop. Today, we're here to get to know Aura a little bit better and learn more about her journey in creating this amazing game. And I could say it's amazing because I've already finished it.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So welcome to A Gaming Network. How are you doing today?
Oh, good. Getting blasted by the sun, but otherwise, yeah. It's a nice day. Finally, spring seems like it's starting to happen. Not getting rained on constantly.
Now, are you still located in Vancouver, Canada?
Yep.
Okay, awesome. We love that because we love a Canadian spotlight here too on the network. So it's like a double check mark for me.
Yeah, I've been in Canada since way before this game, unlike some people who moved up during the process of working on it.
Now, could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself, how you got into the gaming industry, and then how you kind of like landed in this position?
Yeah. So, I went to school for animation way back in the day, like OOs basically. I thought I was going to work in film. I could not find a job in film. What I did manage to find a job doing was the developers of Dungeons of Dreadmore were looking for someone to do some sprite art on the game. And I was like, oh, me. and yeah, they hired me. I ended up working on a whole bunch of the sprite animation for Dreadmore. And then from there, indie games for 13 years now. Yeah, this job is kind of funny. I was just telling a friend locally, like, oh, really be cool to work on like a narrative game. My current thing's like a multiplayer shooter. Oh, and then a few days later, Davey DMs me on Twitter, like, hey,
oh, that's fate.
Yeah,
that is fate, 100%.
Well, it turned out that friend actually had told him that I was looking for work.
All right. A little bit of a career Cupid, we'll say.
And yeah, been on this game for a while now. It's been great.
How many years have you guys been working on the game?
Oh man, I mean, obviously Dave Reese's been doing it longer than I have, but I got hired in 2019, so like 6 years ago. It's been a while, yeah. No, oh boy, COVID happening mid-dev is interesting.
I'm sure. Now, could you tell us a little bit of the synopsis? And this technically should be going out after the game's release, but just in case, maybe do like light spoilers.
Sure, like synopsis of the game's plot, or
yeah, let's go plot.
I mean, oh boy, I've never done this one before. Yeah, Wanderstop is a game about Alta, who was a very successful arena fighter and suffers somewhat of a fall, and let's be real, it's a metaphor for burnout. And yeah, it ends up in this forest looking for a mentor in Master Winters. Doesn't quite find Master Winters, finds Tea Shop, ends up running Tea Shop. Things happen. I'll let you sort of decide whether I should talk about anything past that.
We'll say lots of things happen, and you meet the greatest creation ever to hit the world, which is Boro, who I would die for. I think at this point. And then I think from there, let's talk about a little bit of what exactly you work on. So like you have a couple of things. Obviously you lead the team. What was that like? And what are like the best things or your favorite things to work on?
Oh, it was really like this was a real transition for me. So, the thing about working in indie is like most of the time, especially small indie, which is where I tend to be, it's just me usually, pretty much every previous game to this, it was I'm the rigger, I'm the animator. Sometimes I implement too, because there's just nobody else to do those things. This is the first time I got to work with a team, and it wasn't that way at first. The first few years, I think it was still just me, and I was operating on the assumption that maybe it would always be just me. And then later in dev we were like, oh, we have a lot of stuff we want to do. Actually, let's get people on now that all the characters are in and we have the basics laid down. And yeah, that was a first for me. But God, it's been great. Everyone on the team is so talented. I just want to protect them forever and let them make games with me forever.
Yeah, definitely. I know exactly what you mean. I used to work for a mobile game company and I was the community manager, social media manager, QA lead.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and just like anything they needed, they're like, all right, let me put on this hat. So totally know how you feel
Mm.
there. Did
But
you oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. It's just to finish answering your question there. Yeah. So early in development, it was like I was doing a lot of animating directly. You know, obviously character setup and putting in the fundamentals of the game. And then as things sort of progressed and I got other people on board, I started pushing a lot of the animation stuff onto them because there were a lot of technical things that needed doing. I had implemented a ton of complicated procedural animation stuff in the game that needed bug fixing and updating and stuff as the game went on, and you know, a little bit of FX work and obviously managing people's schedules, etc. It was by the end of development, getting to animate directly on the game was like a little treat where I saved myself time for it when I could because it wasn't what I usually got to do anymore.
Mm. Yeah, that's hilarious. I love that. And now, like as the lead animator, did you find yourself nervous to change into that role, not doing it, or did you find yourself like, oh yeah, this is like what I'm born to do, like let's do it?
Honestly, it's one of those things where um I think at first that thing I was nervous about was like managing other people, you know. I hadn't really
Mm-hmm.
done that before,
Mm-hmm.
but it turns out when you hire really talented people who are just great people, it's actually a lot easier than expected.
Yeah.
I feel like I really enjoy it, honestly. I came out of that feeling really positive about the whole experience, honestly.
Yeah, awesome. And now, did you join in before you guys kind of really decided on like an animation style for the game? Obviously, there's a couple of different things. There's like hand drawn elements. There's like physical elements. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, there wasn't any animation before I came in. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
We had, I think, a placeholder model of Boro that he
Mhm.
was the first character that got in the game, but it wasn't even the one that we ended up using in the end.
Oh
And
wow.
then that was basically it, I think, when I came on board. And so yeah, I you know, established basically everything from scratch in terms of the animation aesthetic, in terms of the like technical underlying stuff, the rigging, all that. And yeah, I mean, it's. I think it's one of those things where, you know, when I first got hired, the first thing I did was interrogate Davey about basically what the themes for the game were and what the needs of the game were, and I feel like, you know, this game is operating in a space that's very able to swirl between, you know, very silly, very wacky humor and really deadly serious moments, sort of at a
Mhm.
moment's notice. And uh, I went to personally what is my biggest inspiration there in terms of very silly, very serious games, which is the Ace Attorney series. I love
Objection.
Phoenix Wright so much,
Yeah.
and I was like, okay, if I'm going to take inspiration from anybody in terms of finding a medium from aesthetic standpoint that is able to do all these things, I got to look at what they did.
I love that. And did you have to, I guess, dig into also cozy games? Because obviously, this game is kind of masked as a cozy game, but like it's really not. It's kind of
Hmm.
meant to break you a little bit. And I'm kind of curious as to, oh yeah, did you look at like Stardew Valley or like any kind of like really popular cozy game? And it's like, let's copy or not copy, let's get inspiration from some of those tropes, but then kind of flip them 180.
It's interesting because, like, so I played a lot of those games, and like from an animation standpoint, I think one of the key things I sort of take away from those games is like a lot of the time the animation is just getting out of the way of the gameplay. You know what I mean? Like it's not the
Mm,
star of the show, and it knows that, and that's fine. Like you don't want an animation of tilling the soil to be 7 seconds long every time you do it, and players like, oh my god, when is this
yep.
gonna stop? And so, you know, I feel like I ended up having to remind myself a lot during production, like, right, no, sure, it can be a little slow to plant a seed, but it shouldn't be too slow. We had a lot of situations where early in development, my first pass on certain things in regards to like the planting and stuff was too slow, and people came back feedback like, oh, can we please do this a little faster? And I was like, okay.
Yeah, love that. I did a little lurking on your social media profiles, and I saw you had a very detailed thread of just kind of like the characters holding the cup.
Oh yeah.
Could you kind of recap a little bit for those who haven't seen that, what it was and what happened and how you kind of like solved that problem?
Yeah, so like early in dev, it was just me, like I mentioned, and I sort of was operating under the assumption that if we were going to have this game as aesthetically ambitious as we were hoping, I needed to not be spending all of my time working on, say, 8,000 variations of characters holding cups, you know? Like, that's just not a good use of my time. And so I tried to set up systems using Unreal Blueprint, because we're using Unreal for the game, that would allow me to sort of automate's the wrong word, make it way faster to make variations on things so that I could say have a character holding a teacup in almost any situation with almost any animation that might be going on. They're talking to you, they're sitting down, they're walking, you know, and not have to hand make all of those. Just using inverse kinematics and a bunch of code to figure out what the character is doing. Are they leaning forward? Are they leaning backward, etc.? Where should their hand be if they were holding the cup in that circumstance, and place it there essentially. And that one in particular, I think, is one of the more successful, like long-term ones that I made in the game. There's a bunch of other tiny stuff too. I actually made a follow-up post on my personal blog about how ladder climbing works, which uses some similar techniques to make sure that no matter where you stop on a ladder, your hands are in the right spot and all that sort of thing. I feel like you know, as an indie dev, finding ways to save yourself time in that kind of way is the only way to make sure you have time to make the really cool stuff everyone remembers. You know?
Absolutely, 100%. And now it's funny that you mentioned kind of like the latter part. I was kind of like messing around, like, oh, how high or like how low do I have to go in order to like brew the tea? And it was a super smooth experience. So I think you guys did a really good job there too.
Hell yeah.
And I guess speaking on like the ladder to brew the tea, how did you guys come up with that kind of process for tea brewing?
Oh my god. I don't know if there's anything else in the entire game that got iterated on more than that. Like, when I came on, there was a part where you like climbed across the ceiling to get, yeah, I don't know. That part, that one didn't stick around. Yeah, it was just, oh my god, iteration after iteration after iteration until we finally found something that human beings could understand. You know, it was one of those things of like, the goal was for it to be very whimsical and gigantic and a real centerpiece for the game, but like also not melt people's brains.
Yeah, 100%. And now would you say that's like one of like the sillier or like memorable moments of the whole animation process, or like what's your top memorable animation moment while creating the game?
Oh god, I mean, I think all my favorites have to do with the pluffins. Those are the penguin
Oh,
type birds that I think people will have seen if they've played the demo or seen some of our trailers. Everything about them was just really fun. The way they like flop around in your arms was just a complete. I was just like, what if I did this? What if I did this? And it's yes. The answer was everyone wanted it to stay.
absolutely. That was such a good decision. I think my husband's kind of obsessed with penguins. So anything that's like penguin esque, he's like, that's mine now. So he was in love with that. Do they? I'm pretty sure they follow you around, but just to confirm, once you feed them tea, do they follow you around?
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right.
yeah. If you feed them, they'll start following you.
Because I noticed, I'm like, why are there three of them just lurking behind me and squawking? And I'm just like, all right, I love this. This is a good like little touch. Was there anything that was obviously a lot of games have Easter eggs? Is there anything in the game that either was just for you and the team, or is there stuff that we, as we're playing, might be like, oh, hey, I get that reference?
What can
Or
I
is it
say that
too
won't make
secret?
Davey kill me? uh, I probably shouldn't say anything about Easter eggs in the game because, again, Davey will murder me. But you know,
Mm-hmm.
maybe keep your eyes out.
Ooh,
As
okay.
far as other stuff, like I don't know, I'm secretly looking forward to the. I don't know if you're aware of like TCRF wiki. the cutting room floor that catalogs like things that are cut from games.
A little
Like,
bit.
I low-key hope people find my animation test level that has a bunch of silly nonsense that is absolutely not for the game in it.
I love it. There's the invite. So if that ever happens, now we know where it came from. And I guess for my next question, was it kind of a challenge to balance like the whimsical nature of the game with the emotional depth, like from an animation standpoint?
Honestly, like, I think that was my favorite part of it. Like, I'm
Mhm.
I'm a big fan of, like, I'm name checking the big ones here, but I think Undertale does a really incredible job of
Ooh.
navigating that dynamic.
Mhm.
And I don't know, that game was very deeply inspirational for me on a lot of levels, and I love that kind of thing, honestly. Like animation is at its heart about acting, and what does an actor want if not to make people feel things, right? To
Mhm.
laugh and to cry, right? And so I don't know. That was I in a weird way, instead of a challenge, I guess I would say it was my favorite part of working on the game, making the characters really, you know, feel the I'm losing my sentence. Like, make it so that when you're experiencing these moments and you really feel for the characters, or alternately you feel something in reaction to them.
Yeah.
Like, I think the press demo that went out has Gerald in it, right? Everybody loves Gerald.
Mhm. Yeah, for sure. And I know from my point of view, I definitely had some tears, had some laughs. So that definitely hit home for me in particular. I think anyone who works in the gaming industry is gonna automatically just be like, oh yeah, they're hitting deep and I feel this. Like it's cut into my soul with burnout. And
Hmm.
I guess like when you are experiencing burnout, and obviously as we've discussed, this game is a giant metaphor for burnout,
Hmm.
where do you seek inspiration to kind of like get out of that creative rut?
God, I mean, the honest truth is, like, for me, it's just like getting away from the thing that's got me in that rut in the first place. I'm the kind of person who takes walks, or like goes and lays down, or like touching grass is great, it turns out.
Especially, I don't know how it is in Vancouver, but in Toronto, it's been very gray and icky for a very long time. And
Mm.
the second I had sun yesterday, I was like, ah, my seasonal depression. It's
Uh-huh.
automatically cured.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, for real though. I gotta say, at least, because I might not have another chance to bring this up, I've been really grateful for post COVID. Internally, we instituted like a sort of half day Fridays rule, where if
Ooh.
you just want to, you could just afternoon on Friday. And genuinely, one of the major things keeping me sane during production of this game, like, especially through COVID. Oh my goodness.
Oh yeah. I love that. And I think slowly but surely people are understanding that like, oh, even if we work less hours, you'll still produce better work because we're
Hmm.
happier.
Being exhausted makes more bugs and less good art, turns out.
Absolutely, 100%. And was there any kind of like effects or animation that you maybe added on in say like a fourth or a fifth iteration that you're just like, "Oh, this was meant to be, like this changed the entire feel of the scene."
I mean, there's two specific things that I did. So I guess I want to bring up at this point. We While I did do some FX on the game, we had a lot of contractors working on it, especially Brian Venson of Let's Make FX did an amazing job. He's such a great guy. But there were two specific things that were mine. So one is the plant growing effect, like when they out of the ground. That was
Mhm.
added fairly late. That was like, I want to say, the last few months actually, just because people were like, I don't like it that they just scale up, and I was like, I can probably do something about this.
Mm.
And dunking the seeds is much more satisfying when they sprout up like that. And the other is, when you're in the forest, you know how like the images will pop up and stuff.
Yeah.
Originally, those just faded in, and I felt like that wasn't really exciting enough for how dramatic a lot of the forest scenes are, and so that like whooshing effect as they come in, that was something I added in response to some playtests.
Oh, okay, yeah, I like that. I really like that. Would you say that you have a character in Wanderlust that like best reflects you?
I feel like I'm always trying to be more like Boro. I don't know if I always
Ah,
succeed, but he's inspirational.
I love him so much. I want him to be my dad, to be honest. I think for me, I can't be. Maybe, Gary, Larry, one of them. I
Oh
think I feel like
no! Oh
I to my day job, I make a lot of presentations, and during that whole kind of segment of the game, I was just like, this hurts, but I understand where the boardroom is.
I will say, my favorite character was Nana. She's was my
Oh,
fave.
yeah.
I did her. I shouldn't say. The animation happens that you probably know what it is. It's long. It's distinctive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
I had a lot of
awesome.
fun with that one.
And I know it's Sylvia who wrote the plant book. I know she's there. Was there any kind of like thought into putting her in the actual game for real, or is she always just going to be an author?
No, she I think she was literally like we wanted an excuse for Davey to do some silly writing because frankly
Mm,
Davey doing silly writing is great. I'm sure you know this if you read all those other
the
books that
bullet
you
book?
can find.
Yes.
uh but no, actually we do have a few characters who didn't make it into the game, but none of them were Sylvia.
Oh man, I'm so interested like what other kind of characters. It'd be really cool to see maybe one day there's a world where you guys do like a making of and we see characters just who are cool but just didn't fit the mold for whatever reason.
Maybe I'll see if I can get permission to post some of that stuff after release.
Sounds good, sounds good. And I guess my next question, what do we got here? We've been like going through. How you feeling so far? You feeling good?
I've probably been rambling way too much, but yeah.
That's what you're here for. So not at all. What aspect of animating the game was the most fun or the most rewarding for you as an animator?
Okay. I mean, there's a few different ways I could answer this. I always love animating pluffins. It's just satisfying and enjoyable. Almost all the pluffin animations were me. I hoarded them to myself. I wouldn't let other people do them. But like, if the most self-indulgent thing I did in this game by a very large margin was the broom combo. When you're sweeping, that
Yeah.
was all like I was like, I want to do this. Nobody asked me for it. I didn't ask for permission. I was just like, I'm gonna put this in the game. And people seem to, every time people find it, they always seem to love it, which is exactly what I had been hoping for. But that was not, nobody designed that except me. I was just like, I want this to happen.
Every once in a while, I'm like, am I going to fight someone? Like, I'm totally willing to fight someone with this broom, but it was a good
I
move that in.
I wanted to make sure all of Alta's animations felt very like I'm not here to do this.
Yeah.
Honestly, like this is she's a fighter. She's not gonna garden gently.
Yeah, 100%. And then was it interesting, I guess, from a mechanic standpoint, designing a game where you're just like, yeah, you can do all of these things, but like also you really don't have to if you don't want to.
Oh man, I feel like that was something we went back and forth on for a really long time in dev. Like there was a time very, very early on where people wouldn't even ask you for specific kinds of teas, and you just had to decide if you wanted to do something interesting with them or not.
Mhm.
That didn't last because it just felt a little too freeform and empty, I guess. But you know, it's it's definitely it's definitely tricky. I feel like, I mean, look, I to be clear, I wasn't a designer on this, so I'm only speaking from my perspective as someone who watched a lot of this stuff mature over the course of development. But like, yeah, figuring out what does it mean to make a game where you're trying not to make everything feel very transactional isn't quite the right word. You know, you don't want it to make it like a productivity fantasy checklist. You know what I mean? Because that's
Mhm.
antithetical to the themes of the game that we're making. But also we don't want what you're doing to feel like it has no meaning at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So where can it be like something that feels rewarding just to do? Where does it feel like we actually do need to have something tie into the narrative? Yeah, that was like one of the core things we were working on this game.
It was such a cool concept. It's like forced relaxation. And then the part of me who is always kind of burnt out anyways was like, no, this is stressing me out. What do I need to do now?
Oh no. This is
But like,
great though.
yeah, it was annoying in the most beautiful way. And like I 100% understand that it was such a powerful tool to enhance the actual game and like the storyline and the narrative. So I really, really love that.
Yes. It's so cathartic hearing this stuff after 6 years of playing this game in secret and nobody knowing anything about it. Because you make things like this with the hopes that people will react,
Yeah.
and you never really know if they're gonna until it's in their hands. So yay,
100%.
I'm really glad.
I think honestly, the timing of this game has never been almost like more important because we are at, especially in the gaming industry, like everyone's being like laid off left, right, and center. People are constantly like, "Oh yeah, look, we're building this really cool game and it did really well." But yet we're still being let go. Like, what's happening? Do I need to work harder? Do I need to work more? And I think that a lot of that is reflected in Alta's struggles throughout the game.
It's so funny too, because I don't know if we knew things were going to end up where they were when it came out, right? But it turns out Burnout is only gotten more relevant over time.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think that's kind of like what I have for game related stuff. And then a little bit back to you. If you could work on I don't know if you're working on next project. I'm hoping so, but we'll be quiet about that. Yeah. But if you could do anything in the world right now, what kind of game would you want to work on next?
Oh my god. There's so many different answers I could give to that. I think definitely the next thing I work on, like, I don't know, oh my god, there's so much, I'm excited to do so much is the thing. I love making cool shit.
Honestly, yes.
Part of me is I want to work on a cool like narrative game. Part of me is I want to work on like, I've been playing a lot of Dynasty Warriors Origins lately, and I'm like, ooh, it'd be really fun to do like a beat 'em up type game. Part of me is just like, please, Potionomics team, I love you. Can you let me work on your next game? I was so jealous when that game came out in the middle of dev on Wanderstop. I was like,
man,
you're everything I want to be.
That must be interesting, like knowing you could do something and you're like, wait, I want to do that right now. Please let me.
Yeah, I mean, this is the inevitability of working on long projects. Is you see really cool shit coming out and you're like, oh man, and then you have to resist changing anything about your current game or it will end up in development forever and ever and ever.
Mm-hmm. And now after all of these 6 years, how would you describe your complete experience in like either a sentence, a couple words, whatever you want to do?
I mean, god, it was a roller coaster, and I'm really excited to see how people feel about it.
I do think you guys will get your flowers. That is my feeling. My personal feeling is you guys definitely deserve those feelings. 100%.
Yeah.
And I guess after that, I have one more question for you, really.
Mm-hmm.
If you were a tea blend from the game, what would you be?
Oh no, from the game, I don't have a list of the...
I mean, okay, we won't talk about Chip right now. If you were a normal cup of tea in the world, what blend would you be?
I feel like I would want to be like a matcha with lemon in it or something like that, and maybe
Ooh,
some chili
okay.
flakes. I really like really strong, intense drinks,
I
and
like
I also feel like I'm just a very loud, intense person.
And I find matcha is one of those flavors that I wish I liked it, and I've tried to force myself so many times. So I love that too. And that kind of brings it to the end. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about or discuss about the game or yourself, or you wanted our people to know?
I mean, I guess my only thing is I just want to shout out the rest of the dev team. They're all so incredibly talented. This is a game where everyone has been doing such an amazing job because everyone else is so inspiring. I really think that having a really great team of people is just great work produces great work. So Temi, our 3D art director, and Natalie, our 2D art director, knocking it out of the park. Alex is in charge of like studio management stuff, has been wonderful. I'm No, I'm gonna blank out everybody. Anna and Liz, my animation team. I love you all. You're wonderful.
I
I
love
feel like
that.
I'm doing an awards ceremony speech now, but like I just, the reason I'm saying this is I think that there's a tendency to, when you have a celebrity developer on the game, everybody tends to attribute everything to the celebrity developer. Everybody's like, it's Davey Wreden's Wanderstop. And obviously it is Davey Wreden's studio, it is Davey Wreden's game, but like so many incredibly talented people contributed so much to this game, and I just want to make sure that they're all remembered too,
Yeah, 100%. That is why it doesn't matter what the game is. Maybe it's the film student in me. It's like you sit through those credits. You give
Mm-hmm.
those people the respect and go straight through to the end.
I have a submission queued up for Moby Games for the day the game releases to get those credits up on there.
Ooh. All right, all right. Well, then I guess that's it. You've come to the end. You did a really fantastic job for your first official podcast. Thank you so much for blessing us with your presence.
Thank you.
It's been like really fun getting to learn more about you and the game creation process. As I've said many times already, I'm such a fan already of the studio and the game.
Thank you.
So I can't wait for it to come out. For those watching and listening, Wanderstop is out on PlayStation, Xbox, and PC March 11th, and I highly recommend that you play it. So see you guys on the pod.